one. This is the Sourceseeker Hour. I am your host, Baruti Carl Alexander. This is our 85th episode. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We are still here, still giving you great information. We have a very important topic, a great topic, a historical topic. We're talking about Black Houston, all the different facets, and we're bringing that into the national conversation also. There's so many things happening with policing and policing the Black community. We're going to go into Houston police. Have they been fair? Have they, in measurement or in comparison to some of the other cities, what is our perspective? I want to bring my guest in at this time. I want to let them introduce themselves. Miss Roxy D, can you introduce yourself and tell us about the Alliance?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Roxy D. Hall Williamson. I am the secretary for the Alliance for a New Justice System, founded by Mr. Robert Williams, and Ms. Coretta Brown is our president. We seek to deconstruct these institutional biases against us and rebuild our justice system because it is working, unfortunately, exactly how it was intended and originally planned out. So we plan to deconstruct that and rebuild it. And once we start rebuilding things for us, it benefits everyone in our human family, So we're very excited to be here and share with you this evening, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Blessings, blessings. And we're going to get into that deconstruction that you are describing. We're going to get into that in detail. Brother Sedrick.
Yes, sir.
Let us know what's happening.
Oh, it is a privilege, pleasure, and honor to always be on the Sourceseeker, and I'm so happy to be with you and Sister Roxy. Thank you for your light. Thank you for your commitment and dedication to our people. And you just said something that was so apropos. The system is designed and it's doing exactly what it was designed to do, to create inequities and inequalities that we see all across this nation, but specifically in our hamlet or in our milieu, as I like to say, or as the old folk used to say, in our neck of the woods. What we have in this city is something that's not talked about, not discussed. And that's why I'm so happy we're having this discussion today. Because when you look at the pay gap, the average Black man makes 70% of what the average white man does, not in 1960, not in 1980, not in 1990, not in 2009, but right here in this time in 2021. And it's even worse for Black women who happen to be, by statistical data, 72% of single parent households, the majority of that being Black women, they make even a less percentage than that. The statistics say somewhere in the area of 58% of what the average white male makes. In the city of Boston, the wage gap or the income gap or the wealth gap, as they like to call it, is $8 for African Americans, and somewhere in the area of whites, it's $276,000. And I'm just bringing this up to show you a comparison because of the wealth that we have in this area. The gap is only $44,000. But this is key. Is that this is one of the wealthiest places in the world. This is one of the wealthiest places in the world. So when we're looking at this wealth gap, this is something that's so exorbitant, it blows your mind. The reason why I take time to say that is because Forbes magazine, one of the most heralded and known business entities in the world for collecting data and understanding commerce, they say that only New York, we are only second to New York in terms of Fortune 500 companies. We had before the pandemic somewhere in the area of almost 50. Okay, we're only behind New York by 20. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because of the oil and gas industry, because of the medical center, because of all of these entities that have manifested and have boomed in this society. There's an exorbitant amount of money at the top and it doesn't trickle down. Okay, all right, the only thing that trickles down is inequality and inequity. So what we're striving to do with conversations like this is to bring out this information, to get rid of the mis and the disinformation so we can make a better understanding. And then, as it says in the good book, it says, with all thy getting, get understanding. Because in that understanding, we can begin to bring some reciprocity, some equity, and some justice.
Very powerful, brother. I must interject this.
Please.
So we live in a capitalistic system.
Absolutely.
Okay. So they set up a system, yes, that is inequitable, and they're going to fight for that particular system, and they have been fighting for it and constructing it in so many different ways. Now, as much as we may holler and scream, it's only going to be by tangible measures that we can start to change those things across the board in the economic system, in the political system, in the judicial system. So we're going to go into how we can do that and how does that manifest itself here in Houston, Texas, and what we can look at manifested here, we can look at manifested nationally. Sister Roxy, you heard the brother's conversation. Let's talk about a little bit about that deconstruction and related to what he was talking about the inequities.
Yes, and that's just a perfect segue into what I want to push back on that. Well, I want to push back a little bit on that word capitalism, because the system that we live in is really more imperialist than it is capitalist. Because the true capitalist system, let's take marijuana, for instance. Perfect example of the inequities that are happening right now. As certain states legalize and we start to decriminalize, we see certain people are getting dispensaries where certain people are still getting locked up for having less than an ounce in their pocket. So economically, criminal justice wise, and everything that you just touched on, that's like the perfect example. Because if we were in a true capitalist society, we would be making that transition for all people who wanted to use that as their stream of income. It would be equitable in everybody being able to get those business loans to set up the dispensary, being able to decriminalize it, within the criminal system, within the judicial system, in order that everyone could make that same money. And in real time, that's not what's happening right now. You see these shops all over the place.
I understand. I think I gotta say this. We acknowledge that it was not set up fair for us. We were 3/5 in the Constitution, and it was never looked at that we were gonna have to get our fair share. Matter of fact, of course, a civil war and so many different things have happened to make sure that we were never had that opportunity. Even though today we get verbiage that is fair for everybody. Right. But as long as they still have the power system, they can control what is the image on TV. They can control, and when I say they, I am talking about those who really look at trying to construct a society to reflect their value system, their ideals. Let's say, make America great again. All right.
That was a dog.
Right. It's nothing.
And I must come back to this. How do we find a way to overcome this in the reality? In the reality, I would tell you this, it's going to take still many, many more years, and it's going to be incremental. But at times, there are going to be people that, let's say LeBron James and Steph Curry decide to put their money together, they could make some serious waves real quick. So talk about, what do you see as some of the ways that we can get past some of these hurdles, Brother Sedrick, and then talk about what are some of the things that we see here in Houston as opportunities.
I love what Sister Roxy said. She broke it down. She said that we don't have capitalism. What we have is for corporatocracy, for the elite, for those that fit in, or as Paul Mooney would say, the complexion of protection, we have socialism. Okay. And for those who don't fit in, we have the worst forms of totalitarianism and authoritarianism. And there's something important that I want to convey. And the sister brought me to that level because we got to break it down. She said education, and she's correct. And we also have to have the kind of information that causes us activation and engagement. They say we're in the information age, but the information is not to turn into informational masturbation or paralysis. No, it's supposed to get you activated so you can begin to address and recorrect and recalibrate the things that are messed up. So as the old folks say, you got to make it right. And the thing is, tonight we have to understand is that in Freedman's Town, and Freedman's Town is something that we need to be talking around all around the world, because those Black people who have been enslaved, they were not slaves. I want to make this clear. They were skilled. They were scientists. They were chemists. They were profound individuals who were prisoners of war on these concentration camps called plantations. And they were able to make the South the fourth wealthiest economy in the world. They were not poor. They were robbed of their wealth.
Yes.
And that wealth needs to be restituted and repaired. And that's why it's so important what Sheila Jackson Lee is doing with HR 40. But I want to clearly say this so we understand. They took the swamps, the bayous, the depths. They had to overcome alligators and mosquitoes as big as Kevin Hart. And they had the heart to be able to build a community that was thriving. There's some 36,000 African Americans doing all lists of and plethoras and multiplicities of things. And I want to make this clear so we understand, because many of us are talking about we should go back to desegregation. We should go back to that time. And I want to clearly say this, and I vehemently oppose anybody who says this out of love. Out of love, we have to get understanding and education. Those things were not equal. Those things were separate, but they were not equal. And that inequality, that inequity created so much confusion, so much deprivation and degradation, not only in the economics and the financial dynamic, but in the spiritual and psychological dynamics. So stay with me. The reason why we have to bring this up is because even in the city of Houston, the city council tried to redline. They tried to segregate and put it in the law. Now, they unfortunately, and thankfully, they were not able to do this, but unfortunately, it went into practice in the private sector. And we have to understand places like CUNY Homes, places like South Park, places like Cashmere Garden, places like Trinity Gardens, places like Acres Homes. They didn't manifest out of just some accident. They came out of willful city planning because they wanted to keep the niggas away from the white folk. This is their exact language, their exact verbiage. So why am I saying this? I'm saying that we need to get educated so that we can begin to call this to the attention of the city leaders and the city fathers so that there can be restitution, so those funds can be divvied in ways that are effective and constructive so that we don't have to get incremental change. No, we can get change that jingles, and we'll take the change that folds too, so that we can begin to control our narrative. And we can get things in order so that our young people don't start at 0, 0, 0, 0, but they know that they have an inheritance that's meaningful and constructive and productive so that they don't have to succumb to death and destruction, just like we did in February when the state of Texas tried to kill us.
Yeah, and in real time, there is legislation in the House right now, House Bill 2207, Brother Ron Reynolds. That's why this Heritage Commission is so important for places exactly like Freedman's Town. I'm originally BOI, born in Galveston, where everything originated, from your electricity to our Juneteenth celebrations. We have to preserve this history, expand our narrative, and to do exactly what the brother just said, to make sure that our children are not picking up a baton all the way from the beginning of the race when we're already up the road on this?
Let's talk about this. Of course, we have a national conversation. Let me make sure I say his name right. Devontae Wright.
Okay, right. Yeah.
Of course, George Floyd, who was from Houston. So many things are happening. I have a young son. I'm concerned about him. What is the perspective of Houston police? Now, when I've interacted with them, I've had some knuckleheads who I'm thankful that it didn't escalate. And I heard somebody on the show talking about the way that you first come and talk to the policeman comes to talk to you. That's going to set the tone because you have to respond. What is the perspective of Houston police?
Yes, sister, you mind going first?
Yes, go ahead, brother. Go ahead, brother Sedrick.
Okay, all right, I'll go first. We're not having the appropriate conversation. Okay. And the reason why I say that is not to denigrate. I still want to be loved. And because I say this out of love, is that we don't have to change our tone. Because white folk don't do that. They talk, they cuss them out. They hold on. They hold
I did not
guns,
say
they do all of that. No, I'm not saying that.
I didn't say we had to change our tone.
No,
I'm saying that the policeman may come to us and set a tone that we have to respond to.
Right. But that's what I'm going into, brother.
Okay.
Is that the police don't set the tone. The law sets the tone. The community sets the tone. The people set the tone. White folk are not going to allow any police officer to set the tone. That's why they call them peace officers. You understand? So what I'm saying is that when you're treated like a second-class citizen, you accept second-class citizenship. But when you understand that you have all rights and privileges, inalienable and constitutional, you don't let police officers set the tone. They are on the low man of the totem pole.
If I may give you an example.
Let me finish.
Okay.
Let me finish, brother.
Yes, brother.
Because what and I won't be long-winded, but I will be strong.
No, go ahead. We got time.
Is this. We have to understand that law enforcement, they are not judge and jury. I hear Black people going crazy. Oh, we're going to get killed. We're going to get this and that and the third. And all that's doing is perpetuating more fear. I understand the history of police. I understand the slave catching. We were saying that 10 years ago before people were Googling it. But what we first were saying is that we have to get a political organization and structure. We have to educate our children to understand how to engage them first and foremost. But we first have to teach them the law and teach them to get involved in the political process so we can begin to change these laws. This is why I'm saying this. You mentioned George Floyd. You mentioned Devontae Wright. You mentioned all of these brothers and sisters. Well, what is empowering law enforcement to do this? The law, the policy. And we have to begin to deal with that, because when a brother gets pulled over for something hanging from his rear view mirror, that's insane. When a brother gets killed because of a counterfeit $20 bill that they still cannot tell you if it was counterfeit, that's insane. And
that's very much insane.
So I'm just saying, and I want to say this, I'll close. We have to understand that the police are agents of a structure and a system. And until we deal with the structure and the system, the agents will always be out of control. And as Bob McNair said, talking about Houston athletes, one of the reasons why Houston athletes don't want to come here, he said, what do you say? He said, you can't let the inmates run the prison. Right now, we've let the inmates run the prison and we wonder why they're killing us.
Let me interject. Now, we have the law, and my son can be out there following the law, knowing his rights, but you can still have quote unquote a knucklehead. What I want is for my son to come home safe and let me deal with the law. But when he's out there, I want him to come home safe, whether he has to say yes, sir, no, sir, lay on the ground, whatever it is. I want him to come home and say, then let me deal with it. Now, you mentioned the knowing the law. And yes, we have to better know the law and have organizations such as the Alliance, such as others. But if the knucklehead does not know or does not respect that, you still want to have my son come home, have your son come home.
Yes.
So you still dealing with the reality and the nuance of dealing with a situation of security and safety, as well as it's going against the reality of dealing with life as a Black man. What do you have to say, Roxy?
This is exactly what the Alliance for a New Justice System is all about. And this is why with our voting education piece of it, all of this is multi-tiered and it has to happen simultaneously.
Absolutely.
So when I talk about education, I'm talking, we have to go back to 1950s basic civics, right? Because we're not getting that in our traditional school systems. I don't care if your child goes to a charter school or a private school, they're not getting basic civics. We have adults walking around in their 60s and 70s that have never voted, that don't understand the power that we wield with our vote and our activism and our participation. And right now, you know, we have a bunch of bills going on.
I want to interject this. I want to interject this. Now, this is even deeper. This system that we're living in has such a trauma that a lot of our people are living within mental illness.
Yes,
So,
and that's why it's so important that we engage in organizations like the Alliance for a New Justice System, everything from ban the box, because once you've done your time and you've done what you needed to do, you should be able to come out and be able to gain employment that pays you a livable wage, right? Keep that recidivism down. We have so much on the books right now that need to be changed. Not only just controlling the narrative, but we have to rewrite the narrative.
Thank you.
Right? We have to rewrite these policies, and no amount of training is going to stop those knuckleheads. What we have to do is uproot them, right? We have to change the whole culture, and even the police tell you, because that's when I was thinking about the question, as far as, you know, one-on-one interactions with Houston PD, I haven't had a problem. Most of my people haven't. However, with the hierarchy, the leadership, the infrastructure, all of that has to be hauled out. We have to like totally reframe, because you're no longer catching us. We're not slaves. This is not that anymore. So you have to deconstruct. I started with deconstructing this. This is where it begins. We have to deconstruct everything the way it stands now and rebuild it with healthy, life-giving alternatives. Because there's no way, like even with this new baby in the news, the 16-year-old girl with the knife, right?
Right.
Everyone that's justifying that baby's life should have been taken is wrong.
Absolutely.
There were other police officers on that scene that hadn't even pulled their gun.
Absolutely.
So why did this one newbie show up and go all bang, bang, bang? We have to deconstruct all of that. And there's nothing that we do that should cost us our lives. When you're taking in white people armed to the teeth who have massacred and murdered multiple people, you're taking them in with no incident. And that's no coincidence that that's happening that way.
Thank you. And I just want to interject.
Yes, go ahead.
Sister Roxy,
go ahead.
She hit it right on the head. And I just want to add this addendum is that police officers are being trained in one community to operate, but yet, ironically, in another community, they're not operating that way, right?
Said that first. In their community, they're called peace officers. In our community, they're law enforcement.
Correct.
The vocabulary matters.
Correct. And I just want to say this because we're talking about Houston and Harris County, one of the largest counties in the world. It was known as Jail Central, prison center, because it was so many people who were being incarcerated or jailed, and not for any serious offense, but so that the system would continue to perpetuate. During the slave days, Do you know that they were able to procure more money from property taxes? Of course, we know that Moses Austin and Stephen F. Austin impresarios, they were giving out, if I'm not mistaken, for about $100, you could get somewhere in the area of 1,000 to even more acreage of land. Somewhere, I've even read reports of 4,400. 4,000 acres, $400. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because those property taxes were taken from wealthy landowners who still own a bulk of that land today. That's where they got their wealth from. And guess what was the big cash cow? Slavery, cotton. Cotton was king. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because after 1865, and they eliminated involuntary slavery, they created a slave system, or slavery by another name, peonage, and they used Jim Crow to support that. So now you have Texas towns that are totally either insulated or supported courtesy of prison populations. So what we have here is the police are inflicting the worst kinds of abject and disrespectful treatment of people. When the policymakers are writing the worst forms of policy, they're being sent to prisons to generate whole entire economies and to subjugate us and then confuse us in these education centers that are nothing but miseducation places, to not get us to understand our civic duties and our rights, so that we can begin to change the policies that would change the policymakers, change the law enforcement, and change the societies we live in.
And I want to go to interject this and go back to this. When they control the messages through the media, let's talk about music. Maybe Sedrick, you might have heard about this. There was a push for rap music to be basically criminalized in a lot of ways, so that they would further promote people into the prison system. And it was a push back in the day. I'm not sure whether it's still going on, but if you have that type of system in place, and of course it's underneath the platitudes that they speak, how do you go up against that juggernaut to deconstruct it? I believe the only thing you can do is overtime, education, and organization. Education and organization and spiritual connection.
Hey, it's so
Sedrick, what you say about that?
It's so beautiful we're having this conversation. I definitely can't wait to hear what Sister Roxy has to say, because I know she's gonna go in on this. And I thank you, brother, for asking some great questions. And the way you got us jumping, moving back and forth, you're keeping us on our toes. I love it. But the word, it's so funny. Just last weekend, I looked up the word music. And I looked up the etymology of the word, and I just want to quickly just share it with you. And I'm gonna try to speak fast so that we can get it out. But music is considered to be the recital, or the melodious, or the melodies connected together for pleasant sound. And when you look up the etymology of the word, it derives from music, or muse. And muse was a way in which we ponder, we meditate, we reflect, we think. And then the pi root of that was literally M-E-N. And it meant literally men think. So our music is meant to help us think. It is meant to help us better understand what to ponder, what to meditate upon, because what we meditate upon, we will radiate. And what we radiate, we will attract. So when you see the deregulation of music and telecommunications in 1996 done by Bill Clinton, when they did that, the local stations disappeared, and the clear channels, the radio ones came in, and they began to play the same music. So where back in the day, you go to California, you go to Texas, you go to New York, you hear three forms and formations of African music, whether it be rhythm and blues, whether it be hip hop and jazz, whether it be soul, it was all connected to the African drum. And the African drum was taken from the African because it was our first form of communication, and that communication caused us to elevate. But what you see happen is that drum was taken out. Now everything was electrified, or I should say decalcified, if I may, by the electric sounds. So now people start making real instrumentation, and brothers and sisters no longer control the information sources of the music. They no longer control the rights. They no longer control their artistry. So now they were used as puppetry to spread out messages of gangsterism, messages of hate, messages which led to this whole black on black mythology, which is madness, right? So what we have to really understand is that now, fast forward 40 years almost, when you look at all of the things that have transpired, I'm talking about 40 years of hip hop, but when you look at, 1996, what has happened is that I can drive anywhere in the world and I can hear myself being called the N-word, my woman and my mother being called the B, my children being attacked and told to sell poison, and all of us are in a trap. And nobody survives a trap, whether you're a bear, a mouse, or a human being. So what we have to understand is our young people are our most prized possession, and they're our most powerful natural resource. And when their minds are poisoned and toxified by the nonsense that they hear consistently and constantly, then we won't get any Frederick Douglasses. We won't get any Malcolm X's. We won't get any Dr. Martin Luther Kings. We won't get some young thugs. You understand? So, and I'm not knocking that brother, but I'm understanding that this is not an accident. This is by design. So what we have to do is we have to let these youngsters know it's in your spirit to move to the beat. It's in your spirit to move to the rhythm. Now we got to get you to understand what music is meant to do. It's meant to elevate you, grow you, uplift you, and watch how you begin to see things manifest that are positive, that are loving, that are building. That's not corny. That's not lame. That's the way you play the game.
Very much so. And I continue to talk about education, organization, and spiritual connection. Sister Roxy.
Yes, Brother
Talk
Keeler.
about how can we get through to our young brothers here in Houston who may not understand or be aware that they have some forces coming against them.
Right, and agreeing with the Brother Keeler had me with the etymology. That's my area right there,
Wow.
these words. And again, word, like my mother taught us growing up, words make worlds, right? Your words make worlds. And not going too hard on the youngins because it's us, really. You know what I mean? Again, deconstructing and reconstructing these narratives. And especially for our babies in Houston, I'm Houston, Galveston area. Most of it to me, it goes beyond the music, even beyond what we're talking about. I'm a product of hip hop. What hit me was Public Enemy, not necessarily NWA, even though, I eventually brought it all together. My father was a musician. He was a drummer. So beyond, the music being able to uplift you, you have to meet those youngsters where they are. So if they're into that trap music, then we got to find trap artists that are willing to give a better message, that are willing to reconstruct those narratives. You have to touch them where they are. Excuse me, because I believe that's why we've lost so much, especially because we have Black churches from hither to thither, but we're not making an impact through the churches anymore. The churches used to be our place where we would come meet and have political rallies as well as get our souls fed. But just like in the 90s, when the music was deregulated and we started getting all this prosperity gospel that had nothing to do with touching people's soul, you just reached in their pockets. You've got to deconstruct that and tell the truth about it and be willing to step out and do something different and do something new and do something fresh.
I want to get back to the deconstruction we're talking about. We up against a juggernaut. I mean, if we just talk about the impact upon our young people's mind, as Brother Sedrick was talking about, all that they are hearing, all that is coming against them, they don't a lot of times know which way to turn. I mean, and they even have the question of what is masculine, what is feminine, what is, so many different things are coming against them. And those are our future. And if they don't have the proper understanding, it's going to be very difficult. So how do we, I know we have to build better organizations. What organizations do we have here that are part of bringing forth those positive messages?
That's a beautiful.
Can we go into that? Go ahead.
Sister Roxy, her organization, I'm going to follow, I'm going to support, and find out how I can be a better resource. That's the first thing. Because what happens, I said again, love.
I said, yes, please.
Yes, ma'am. Because what happens is we have these conversations and they're in silos, they're in vacuums, or I'm saying this, you saying this, and we only meet up for the little hour that we have, and then we move around. So it's a lot of signifying and pontificating. And I'm not saying, I'm just being real.
But let me cut in.
Go ahead.
We have to start where we are and start there. But in this new age, now we have a lot of different podcasts. We have some young people with podcasts, and we have to use these new technologies, these new ways to further our message and create circles.
Right.
You and I are a circle. We have a connection, brother Sedrick. Sister Roxy, we are building a connection. Let's further our connections and share our understanding and information and help to educate. That's where we have to start, because we are up against a juggernaut. I do not want to, because if you look about television, they have certain messages that, even though we have some Black faces, we have some Black producers, I was very amazed that they did allow Judas and the Black Messiah to come out. So there are some messages.
It's called programming. It's called programming for a reason.
Absolutely.
Yes, but within those challenges, there's still some crevices coming through. There are still some opportunities coming through.
I can tell you right now, for me, and this is, beyond my organization, we're talking about young people right now. And there's a group in Houston called the Young and the Politics. That will be an amazing place for, if you know some younger people that are really into, they don't know what's going on, but they want to know, and they're open to learning something different. The Young and the Politics, again, that's Ms. Coretta Brown, who's also the president of our organization, AFANS, the Alliance, but she also works with a lot of young people because she's younger than I. But we have groups like hers, the Young and the Politics, that work alongside us with the Alliance. And like you said, Brother Alexander, we've got to expand these circles. And nobody has to take over one. We just have to be the big umbrella that we say we are. And we don't have to be running everybody's platform. We just all have to be walking in the same direction and willing to walk hand in hand to get to where we're going.
I just want to add an addendum real quick, because I hadn't finished what I was going to say. I think that we give the boogeyman way too much power. And I want to give a case in point, because here in the city of Houston, and Roxy, I don't know if you're in Houston, but definitely.
I'm in Galveston, but okay, yeah, we're together.
Great. So we have to formulate a better partnership with Houston and Galveston. I was in Galveston a couple weeks ago.
Inter-county.
Yes.
We're building it right now.
Yes, and I just want to say this because this is so true. TSU and the students of TSU, and I'm using them as an example because it was all across the country and definitely here in the state of Texas, they played an instrumental role in desegregating or integrating, if you will, the society that we have not only here in Houston and Galveston, but Texas and the South in general. The reason why I say that is because when the students of Texas Southern, and rest his soul to Brother Cleaver and Mr. Graves, and with the help of Mr. Lawson and Mr. Meese, and the business community, the Black bourgeoisie. They weren't just trying to buy Rolls Royces. They were supporting behind the scenes and in front of the scenes the young Black people who were going in Foley's, who were going in Weingartner, who were raising Cain to get freedom. And we dismiss them and forget about them, but we have to remember that their movement was so pivotal. And that's the thing that I think we have to understand with our young people. Our young people want to be involved in something. Our young people want to be engaged. They want to make change. They're tired of the way it is. They come with a new force. They come with a new energy. They come with an intellect, ready to change and ready to calibrate, ready to create new. But what we have to do is stop placating and stop playing games, because they can see through them. We need to tell them the truth. And if you tell them the truth, they're going to ride with it. Now, some won't agree, but most will begin to understand, boom, this is what we need to do. And the reason why I say this is because you have just to merely look at George Floyd. It was a young person, a 17-year-old young lady who shared a video that went all across the world, had people in Palestine protesting. And what it changed was the narrative that the police had put out that a man had died and that the police had tried to help him and assist him when no, they tried to kill him, and they did. And this young lady, a 17-year-old young lady, and I want to compliment the other witnesses as well, who stood up and showed this video. So what we have to do is realize that social media is not a bad thing. It's a tool. But if we use it effectively and constructively, then we can create some productive and positive things to occur. So I'll just say that our young people are ready to rock and roll. We just got to give them the right band music. We got to give them the right notes to play.
Look, and let me jump on top of that. Because, you know, you have all these people and they're throwing, you know, little Stacey Abrams and her magic. Let me tell you something about working out there with that Senate race. Stacey Abrams, the sister is bad, but it wasn't no magic. She used her tool. This sister used these same young people that everybody's woe as, those young people took to the streets, and and everybody was talking about they didn't have any direction. Guess what? They got results. And all Stacey Abrams did was get them young folks and go into county. And this is what we have to do in Texas and not be afraid. She went to those corners and cracks and crevices of that state that nobody else was talking to. We got them right here and we can do what they did in Georgia. We could do it even better. Because we got folk out here that are not afraid to go and talk to them neighbors up the street that don't necessarily look like them. They're not afraid, you know what I'm saying, to go and step into those spaces. I'm one of those ones. I'm not afraid. You tell me where we got to go get voters, we're going to get them, because the power is in our vote. The power is standing behind groups like Alliance for a New Justice System and paying attention to what bills are on the Senate floor. And instead of us always crying and complaining about the aftermath, being a part of keeping it from happening in the first place. And that's what we have to do. And we have the resources in our young people to put bodies in these spaces, because like we just went and lobbied this week for the George Floyd Act. Now we could have all went individually and probably gotten nowhere, but as a group, and we had a small group, but when you show up with numbers, and that's what your young people are good for, bodies in the spaces, we can do things that do not have to wait on incremental. I'm with Dr. King on that. Your incremental telling us to wait, that's slow moving stuff. No, when they have the power to do it now. If they have the power to allow some folk to do some foolishness on this side, then you can take care of the real deal on this side too. And you can't tell me that we can't do it budgetarily, because I'm watching you waste my tax dollars. And I have a say in that.
Very much so. So many things are possible if we could build circles with our young people, build circles with each other. One of the biggest things in our community is we got to learn how to love each other better. I mean, they try to teach us to hate one another. It's always been a part of the peculiar institution.
Yeah,
to set us against one another. Black man against black woman.
No.
Black young people against black old people. So yes, we have to learn how to love each other better and continue to build circles. We are coming toward the end. However, we still have quite a bit of time to make our final statements and share as much as you would like, and tell people if they want to continue the conversation, how they can continue the conversation with you. let's start with you, Roxy, on that. Go with your final statement. This is not your last word, so don't worry
That's
about that.
fine.
If you have another something that you think of after you finish talking, you'll have another opportunity. So go ahead.
Well, I actually want to plug a couple of things. We're going to start with the Alliance for a New Justice System. If anyone is interested in the work that we're doing, the bills that we're supporting, bills to watch and track and follow, you can visit us at www.texansforjustice.com. Again, texansforjustice.com, TEXANSFOR justice.com. Also, I know we have a lot of Juneteenth celebrations happening around, our area, because this is what we do. However, again, from Galveston, and along with Miss LaWanda Allen and Mr. Sam Collins, from the big, beautiful, brand new mural that we have down on the Strand that you can use interactively. Just come on down and see us in Galveston for Juneteenth or in or around Juneteenth. There's so much going on. There should be some national coverage of the mural and some other things, progressive things we're trying to get done on the island and in the county. And like Mr. Keeler, he just made my point that I was going to try to make this evening. My goal individually and as a part of my different alliances is to find a way to make a presence in all 254 counties in this state. If we have Black, brown, others, marginalized, I don't care who we are, all of us, white, Black, otherwise, we need to be touching hearts and minds in all 254 counties in this state. And if we don't work together, we're going to continue to perpetuate this Confederate state of malaise that we've been in, and we can't continue to do
But aren't things really changing? Houston, we have our second Black mayor. Texas has almost, I say almost, went Democratic the last 3 elections. So and our Black population is pretty progressive here. So aren't things moving in a direction, and we just give it that extra push?
Yeah, it's not that we're red, we're just but we've got to touch those low propensity voters and those non-voters. We've got to bring them out.
But at the same time, we got these Republicans making these voting rights bills in the state. So you still have towns like Vidor, towns like Cut and Shoe, maybe a few more where there's a conservative, strong base that we still got to battle against and deal with.
That's the fight. That's the fight, and that's what we're here for. That's the fight. And as long as you're clear on what you're against, because we're not against people, but we're against that Confederate mindset. We're against these Confederate monuments. You lost. And it's time to set that narrative straight. Definitely.
But I must interject this. It's not going to be done without a real struggle, because you got 74 or more million people that voted for Make America Great Again, which is an acronym for let's get a hold of these incorrigible people, quote unquote, Blacks and browns. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be a challenge. So how do we address these challenges? Brother Sedrick.
Okay, we address those challenges by focusing on what we want. See, they say to the victor goes the spoils. But if you watch the victors, they're not in opposition of anyone. No, they're committed to their commitments and dedicated to their dedications. What has happened is we are going through what is called a third redeemer process to some. I just call it, racist white folk being racist white folk. And they are in the Texas legislature doing everything they can. Out of the 361 bills that have been restrictive in voting across 47 states in this country. And as Malcolm X said, America is Mississippi. Don't keep saying the South. No, America is Mississippi. Because what we have now is a change and transformation.
Please clarify that.
Well, what he was saying is segregation was as bad in Mississippi as it was in New York. And
Yes.
many people don't know this, but the most segregated state in the union is New York City.
Yes.
So what we have is, and Houston's not too far behind, don't get it confused. But the thing is this, is that we live in a city that's a minority majority. And as if you listen to the research of Dr. Kleinberg at the Kinder Institute at Rice, he says that what we have is an ethnic minority of minorities. White folk don't run it. Okay, Hispanics don't run it. We have a plurality of people. And the reality of it is this should not be a Republican county. That's why it's blue now, okay? But what we have now is implemented 49 restrictive voting laws in the state of Texas. And let me say this is very important. We have bills being put in place to limit the education, to limit the money that's going to be given to education. The federal government gave over $35 million to the state of Texas.
They're sitting on it.
They're sitting on it. They're sitting on it because they know it's supposed to go to poor Black and brown communities. And what we have to realize is that Joe Biden went and gave, we got Trump out. Now it's time to get to work. Now it's time to work that, because we don't have a 4-year president. We have 2-year presidents. Yes. Because in less than that time, there'll be a new House and potentially a new Senate. So we got to get on it, and we can't wait, because this legislator right here with Dan Patrick, whatever name he wants to call himself, because you know it's not his real name. And then you got Ken Paxton, a modern day Jesse James. So when you have all of this kind of criminality at the top, you can't expect but get the kinds of things that we're seeing, the malfeasance that we're experiencing. And I'm not just crying out in the wilderness. We have folk like Ron Reynolds and folk like Garnett Coleman who are out there doing the work. We got to hold Harold Dutton accountable because he's done some terrible things with the education bill. But I think the thing is this, is that these kinds of conversations can't happen once a month or once a week. We have to be talking about these things because policy and policy makers, they shape our society. I'll say this and I'll close, because I think it's important to know, is going back to what the Texas Southern students did. They were going to protest when the NASA, when they were going to do this big thing for, for the moon. And we all know that the first word spoken on the moon was Houston. Right. So no wonder when they came to Houston, the students were going to shut it down. They were going to create a blockade. But the wealthy in this city who control this city, not the police. We keep talking about the police. Don't talk about the people who pay them. That's who you talk about. But the reality of it is from John T. Jones and to this gentleman by the name of Bob Dunless. And it was so pivotal that I mentioned this, and I'll explain why. They decided to negotiate with the Mac Hannahs of the world, with the Judson Robinsons of the world, who helped transform this society. And they decided, okay, we'll go ahead and desegregate the movie theaters. We'll desegregate the restaurants. We'll desegregate all of these places that Black folk had been dying to get into. And instead of building their own and building greater infrastructure from the governmental subsidies that these white folk were getting. But I'll say this and I'll close. Dulles was moved because he did not want a riot. Now, the riot that he remembered as a child was the 1917 riot that happened in the city of Houston. And he said it haunted him. Why? Because he saw Black men and white men die. And that's what we have to understand is that hatred creates death and destruction. And they were able to stand up against the oppression, repression of Jim Crow to create a more equitable society. And this society has grown exponentially. So what we would say to anyone who wants to put in Confederacy or anything correlated to that, you're not just hurting us, you're hurting yourself. You're hurting the wealth and the well-being of your children, because this city has grown exponentially because of desegregation. And I'll say this and I'll close. Those men who stood up and fought, yes, they died, many of them, okay? Many of them were executed. but the 10 that were released by Woodrow Wilson, a known segregationist who actually played the birth of a nation in the White House. And that needs to be talked about because it showed Black men as savages. It showed Black men as beasts. It showed Black women as nothing, and all of these kinds of things. And the Ku Klux Klan as leaders, as heroes, just like many are trying to portray Derek Chauvin today. And we have to stand against that diametrically and in totality. And I'll say this in close, because I think it's important. He said he wanted to build morale and he wanted to build a zeal because he knew that the Black men, if they got a part of the army, then this nation would become the most powerful in the world. So wherever we go, we glow and we showcase our greatness. All we have to do is do what we've been doing for them, for ourselves.
I just wanted to interject when you said Mac Hanna and the other person, those
Justin
were
Robinson.
students at TSU who negotiated, or the government negotiated with them at that particular time. And when you have a force or you have people, they tend to negotiate if it's, well, in that situation, it was that they negotiated because they wanted to not have a conflict, but they thought it was more economical also. And going back to that economics, if we can gather our economics, we can have more impact. We can have more impact. And that's a part of building circles also. So we are at the end of our show. We talked about some powerful things. We went in a lot of different directions, but very important things as it reflects Houston and as it reflects our nation that we live in. And we are going to continue to talk about deconstructing the old system and finding a new road. This is the Sourceseeker Hour. I'm your host, Rudy Carl Alexander. Sister Roxy, before we go, how can people reach you? Make an additional final statement.
Awesome. Yes, if you want to reach me and anyone at the Alliance for a New Justice System, again, that website is www.texansforjustice.com. You can email me personally, Roxy Hall @texansforjustice.com. And you can also reach me at Givers, giversislandersvote.org, or you can just look up Givers, GIVERS, Galveston Island Voter Education Resource Services. So I'm available wherever you need me. And for you, sir, I left the information in the chat.
Yes, ma'am. Peace and power. Thank you. Thank you. Very beautiful. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Brother Sedrick, you have a powerful podcast. Share with the people when your podcast is, okay, and the direction of your podcast, and then give us a final statement.
Okay, thank you. I have to have both of you on the FM radio show. It's called Conscious Mindset. We've been doing it almost 8 years now on KPFT 90.1, 89.5 in Galveston, my sister. So hopefully you can tap in and tune in. And also we recognize our ability to speak to our brothers that are locked behind bars. We cannot forget about them. COVID-19 has ravaged many of our incarcerated communities. And what we have to do moving forward is we have to put more focus and attention on the kinds of services that they're receiving. So we also are in Huntsville at 90.1. And I just want to say this, definitely appreciate both of you, and everything that you all are doing is fabulous. We are working in those circles, and let's continue to just expand the tent and use operational unity all the while. So we come on Sunday nights, 9 p.m. to 11 on 90.1 if you're on the FM dial. And we also do some on Facebook at 7:30 on Conscious Mindset. You can follow that page, Conscious Mindset, or you can follow me at Sedrick Keeler on Facebook. And I'll say this in close, I really know that we will win. Dr. Kaba, who is a friend of mine, and he's been on Hidden Colors, and he'll be on this new film, Buck Breaking, by our dear brother, Tyreek. He says that in the end, we will win. And if we gather and glean the consciousness to know that we are the ones that we're waiting for, and there's no more time to wait or waste, things will be done. Because when this Republic of Texas was made, they put in a provision that said no African person or African person of any descent to Africa could ever be free. And not only now are we free, but we have the ability to achieve whatever we believe and conceive if we're willing to put in the work and leave our egos to the side. I promise you, we will reside in the winner's circle. So I know and understand that the Source Seeker is going to be pivotal and key to making this dream a reality. Because Dr. King said it best. He said, I've been to the mountaintop and I've seen the promised land. So I'm not worried. I'm not scared. I'm determined. And I'm committed to my commitments and dedicated to my dedication, because I know we have phenomenalities like yourselves working and doing the work, and it's going to work. So in the end, we will win.
In the end, we will win. This is the Source Seeker Hour, our 85th episode. I appreciate our guests. I appreciate you, audience. Thank you very much. Of course, you know how to reach me, Rudy Carl Alexander, the Source Seeker. This is the Source Seeker Hour. Thank you, everybody. Next week, we'll have Bishop George. He'll be sharing with you. Everybody take care. We'll see you next week. Thank you very much. Peace and power.
Peace and power.
Love and light.
Yes, love and light. Y'all take care. Peace and blessings.
All right.
Take care.
All right. Take care.
Yes.